Hello everyone, this is Benny, and we're going to talk about fear of failure. So learning objectives, you'll be able to define what fear of failure is, you'll have an understanding of what research on fear of failure is out there, you'll have an idea for the different causes of fear of failure, and you'll learn some techniques and strategies that you probably already know and for overcoming this fear to fail. So outline what it is, then go into the causes, and then go into the strategies. So what is it? What does it mean to fear failure? Cigar, Lavelle, and Spray, 2009, pretty much sum up fear of failure in a nutshell. Fear of failure as the motive to avoid failure because one feels shame and humiliation upon failure. Also, it's been conceptualized as unidimensional and as a personality trait, so some have it, some don't. If athletes perceive that they will not meet the demands of their sports or winning, performing well, they're likely to feel that their goals are threatened and therefore experience this fear of failure. And many individuals learn to associate fear of failure with negative consequences and therefore experience fear and apprehension in evaluative situations. So it really comes down to the way you perceive events, the outcome of events, and whether or not, if that's negative, it most likely will lead to this fear of failure. So causes, burnout. These studies examine referees, but burnout is well correlated with the athlete. And I say that because, long grueling seasons, there's been many cases of athletes experiencing burnout. And so, Rainey and Hardy, 1999, examined sources of stress among certified basketball referees in relation to burnout and termination, quitting. And through questionnaires, they examined 721 participants, and they found that fear of failure was a significant predictor of burnout. So burnout led to fear of failure, and questions that were evolved around fear of failure were critical decisions during games, maintaining concentration, and making bad calls. So referees were fearful of these three things, and therefore led to these feelings of fear of failure in the future. Taylor et al. 2008 investigated the role of burnout as a mediating effective response between perceived stress and dropout intentions among soccer officials. As well, they used a survey, and 529 officials participated, and stress had a direct negative effect on burnout, while burnout appeared to have a direct positive effect on perceived stress over time. And so fear of failure was the strongest predictor of burnout. Low self-esteem and perfectionism. Low self-esteem, this idea of thinking lowly of yourself, not thinking very highly, not being confident in your skills and whatnot, and your ideas. And then perfectionism, this idea of having to be perfect, striving for perfection. Cavolo, Hasman, and Fallby, 2002, investigate the relationship between different patterns of perfectionistic dimensions and sport-related competitive anxiety and self-confidence for elite athletes, so athletes that were already in Olympics or potential Olympians. These findings correspond well to findings showing that individuals who are categorized as having low basic or high earning self-esteem display high degrees of fear of failure and test anxiety. This basically summarized that unsuccessful is nevertheless a threat to their fragile self-esteem, which results in fear of failure and thereby doubts about their actions and concerns and about mistakes. So, Vardar and Vardar and Kurt, 2007, also investigate the prevalence rate of disordered eating behaviors in young female athletes. 214 female athletes participated in this, and basically what they found is that female athletes who had disordered eating behaviors had higher state and trait anxiety levels than athletes who do not have eating disorders. So athletes who did have eating disorders had this, this knack for anxiety and whatnot. And this kind of leads to my idea of low self-esteem. Usually eating disorder comes from this idea or this feeling of low self-esteem, self-worth, and perfectionism. Striving for perfection, wanting to be perfect, and having to do every little thing. And Simon et al. 1999 studied the failing within the academic athletic setting of Division I athletes that I also think relates to this, and they found that that success indicates competence or ability and thus enhances one's self-worth. So succeeding enhances your feelings of self-worth, self-esteem. In competitive situation where few succeed, the first priority for those who fear they may not be successful is the avoidance of failure. and the implication that one lacks ability or competence. So trying hard and failing leads to questioning one's ability, which in turn diminishes self-worth, which in turn leads to fear of failure. Ego goal orientation, one of my favorites. So based on the achievement goal theory, there's task oriented, which, you focus on improving your own skills, and then there's ego, just look at the outcome, winning or losing. Smith Cummings and Small 2008 found that as a result of their achievement experiences, people developed achievement goal orientations. They also found that avoidance motivation is traditionally indexed by performance anxiety and fear of failure measures. 992 male and female athletes were involved, and it basically led that the final conclusion is ego-initiating climates frequently are linked to negative outcomes, including fear of failure. So this idea of always winning or losing, focusing on the outcome, leads to negative outcomes, because if you don't accomplish that goal, that end outcomes, then that's all that everything is based off of in your mind. You are prone to fear failing, because if you never accomplish these goals, I mean, they might be unrealistic per se, and if you don't accomplish them, then you're just building kind of this negative outcome after negative outcome. Cigar Lavelle and Spray 2009 studied 11 British male and female elite athletes, youth athletes, 14 to 17 through interviews, so qualitative type work. They found that all these athletes perceive failure in sport as outcome oriented, such as losing, not winning. And then again, this could do with age. Some also perceive failure as performance-oriented, such as not doing your best, not performing well, not meeting goals and expectations. The most common fears expressed these athletes were fears of losing, not winning, beaten. For example, I'm scared of losing and I get nervous. Negative socialization, Cigar and Lavelle investigated the development and origins of fear of failure in adolescent athletes by examining how parental sport socialization practices in daily parent-child interaction contribute to this development of fear of failure. And basically, they found that over time, fear of failure becomes instilled in these athletes and these youth athletes, because their parents, exhibit punitive behavior, controlling behavior, high expectations for achievement, and these negative responses to their child's failure can contribute to the child's fear of failure development. As a child appraises these practices and responses to be aversive to these consequences of failures, and subsequently fear of failures is a result. And then shame and embarrassment, a feeling of humiliation. That's basically what shame and embarrassment is. And I would like to say this is almost the definition of fear of failure. And Conroy 2004 aimed to establish the unique psychological meaning of low-order fears of failing. Samples of recreational athletes, 440 female varsity intercollegiate athlete and field athletes, they found that fears of experiencing shame and embarrassment appeared to be at the heart of dysfunctional aspects of fear of failure, and fears of experiencing shame and embarrassment were associated with a unique pattern of increased self-blame and reduced self-affirmation with failing. And also, fears of failing, shame, and embarrassment also seem to be uniquely associated with heightened introjected regulation of behavior. Conroy 2007 studied 408 high school and college athletes, and they found through the PFAI that scores represented fears of failing as separate categories, either experiencing shame and embarrassment, evaluating one's self-estimate, losing social influence, or having an uncertain future and upsetting others. So these were all things that resulted within fear of failure. And at the top, as you can see, shame and embarrassment. So, what does this all mean? Fear of failure is something that may be a personality trait. It is definitely something learned over time through certain experiences. So I feel as though, yeah, it could be something, that people are more prone to. Then again, failing is really determined by the way you perceive it. For instance, if I didn't reach my PR, if I'm prone to be negative, then I'm going to be like, well, I failed. But if I'm not, if I have that kind of growth mindset, then I'm going to look at it in terms of, I'll get it next time, and therefore I won't be going towards that fear of failure. So I can see how personality plays in, but also it's a learning as described by socialization as well. It can be instilled by parents, by coaches. It can just be built up. Then, burnout can lead to the fear of failure through constant evaluation of one's expectations gained through themselves and others. There is a connection between low self-esteem and perfectionism when it comes to fear of failure. So athletes are always striving to build their self-esteem by constant demands on their own performance and perfection, and need for approval and admiration from others. So, this need to be perfect can come from a low self-esteem, a low self-worth. And, as mentioned earlier, things such as eating disorders, things such as overuse injuries can all result into perfection, which can not always be a good thing, and fear of failure can come from that as well. There is nothing wrong with being ego goal oriented, but it could be detrimental if not task oriented as well. So it's good to have outcome goals. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all you have and you don't achieve them, then you're going to build this tendency to fear failing, because all that you're going to have in your experiences is not achieving those goals. So you have to have those kind of process, those goals focused on yourself, your skills. And then a negative support system will equate to a negative mindset, yet a fear to fail. So having a support system, especially in younger ages, if you don't have your own self-control, can lead to having this fear to fail later in life. Shame and embarrassment is pretty much the definition of fear of failure. It pulls many other issues together, such as having uncertain future. So, say that if you don't do well, you don't think you're going to get that scholarship, upsetting others, self-blame, and holding one's emotions in. So, strategies. First, a couple studies, things that shouldn't be the end result. In cigar, Lavelle, and spray, it is discussed that some athletes reported that to avoid failure, they increase their amount of training effort. So say they weren't accomplishing this goals, they think they have to work harder. This idea of perfectionism, right? Also, Conroy in 2004 is interesting to note that individuals reported treating themselves while failing in a manner that closely resembled their feared consequences of failing. So they devaluated themselves by criticizing themselves. So negative self-talk. So this leads into some strategies I had in mind to cope with this idea of fear of failing. First, I think it's important to become aware of your own strengths and your weaknesses. Performance profile, as you guys know, is really great. Evaluating what you're good at, what you're not good at, and work on those weaknesses, as well as still finding time for those strengths. Not necessarily perfecting everything, but doing what you need to do to be your complete athlete. And then watch past performances. Build your self-esteem back up, and by watching you perform well before at a high level. And then also these process task oriented goals. Focus on skills, on the process of getting to that outcome goal, rather than just focusing on the outcome goal. So, for example, I will focus on relaxing my shoulders the last 200 meters of my 1500-meter race, rather than being like, I want to win that race. Well, let's focus on something that you can practice during practice, maybe at the end of workouts. And then lastly, positive self-talk. This will help in controlling your own effort, right? And reframing those negative talks, those negative self-talk, because I think this fear of failure all stems from what you think, right? And so taking those negative thoughts and turning them into positive ones. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. The main takeaways: you're supposed to be able to define fear of failure, have an understanding of what research on fear of failure is out there, an idea for the different causes, and then some techniques and strategies to cope with them. Here's the references, and I'll see y'all later.